Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and back with me again this week, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on is, I said weekly. Obviously, we took last week off for no other reason, really, than to let the Libsyn account kind of reset at the beginning of a new month rather than throw another podcast into our overwhelming January where we had all of our best of 2023 episodes. So today going to be our first kind of normal episode back this year, really, because today we're going to catch up on all of the things we've been playing in 2024, as well as I guess end of 2023 stuff, if there was a blurring of those lines. And I think pretty much everything we're talking about today is a 2024 experience. So I'm going to be talking about my time with the Yakuza / Like a Dragon series. Which is going to include I played through Yakuza 3, Yakuza 4, Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, and I'm up to chapter 4 in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, or I just started chapter 5, I guess. And Cameron is going to actually kick us off with his thoughts on Palworld, the big game of the moment, I would say, as well as some additional thoughts on Persona 3 Reload and Hazbin Hotel. So before we dive into that, if you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast, all that fun stuff. So Cam, tell me Palworld, and then we'll do kind of your block of games and then my block of games. So Palworld, what's the deal with Pokemon with guns?
So I think that's really where a lot of the appeal for this game definitely comes from. It definitely is coming from this idea of Pokemon with guns, even though this game really just does not fit within it's only surface, it's very shallow. The idea of it being Pokemon with guns is a very shallow idea that gets taken away very quickly as soon as you jump into this game.
Yeah, I've heard far more. It's like Arc or something like that.
Yeah.
But obviously the selling point from all the trailers and stuff was it's like Pokemon with all the design of the creatures, but they have guns. So that was very much obviously what has kind of taken off in the zeitgeist of things.
Absolutely.
And what has gotten it to sell probably at this point, sell/get 20 million-ish players.
Yeah,
it's going crazy on Steam, and then it also has huge numbers on Xbox Game Pass.
They released the numbers. Last time I heard anybody talk about it, it was 11 million on Steam and 9 million on Game Pass.
Okay, that's odd because I'd seen 12 million on Steam and 9 million. No. I don't know. Whatever. I'd seen it totals up to 19 million. So I was I'm pretty sure we've passed 20 at this point.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's now the most played game on Steam right now. Not in the history of Steam, but
it's got the number 2 most concurrent players.
Yes. Right under PUBG at the height of PUBG's intense fandom, when everybody was playing it.
Before Fortnite.
Came
along and stole its thunder.
Pretty much. Yeah, there's a lot to appeal about this game. You basically start off where it's you've washed ashore on this Palworld land, and then from there it's pretty much no real hand holding. There's some instructional stuff, but it's super. If you've ever played a survival game, whether it even something as basic as Minecraft,
Lego Fortnite
is a great example.
We got sucked into a lot.
Yeah, it definitely falls right into that more so than anything else. The Pals and Palworld are really more of a means to an end of continuing to grow out your bases and taking control of territory. It really does feel more like an expansion game, where you're taking down the towers. There's not really any story. It's super story light. There's a lot of things there's an older ancient civilization and other stuff, but really it's about basically building up a power base and then kind of rolling out with and taking doing what you want in this world. It has a lot of things to build, a lot of things to a lot of different pals to explore. There's pals that you can only get through breeding. There's legendary pals. So like there's the Pokemon aspect is still pretty strong throughout it.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, it just really sits on top more than anything else. The depth of this game and the real meat and potatoes of this game is the base building, is that arc, Valheim style survival mechanisms about it. And then you use your pals to basically like mine for you, cut down trees for you, basically do the manufacturing part of you. So it has a little bit of like Satisfactory. If anybody out there played that, I didn't play it, but my brother-in-law, John, who we play D&D with, he has played it extensively, and it's very much in that same vein of you have these pals and you set them down at a base and you give them like the AI is pretty good. The only thing I'd say is like it's a bit iffy when it comes to like depending on like the scope of your base and like where your boundaries are. If you're on a cliffside, sometimes if your expansion goes past that cliffside, sometimes your pals will all of a sudden like when you like warp back to your base, your pals will be all of a sudden be at like the bottom of that cliff, not dead, just that's where they got placed in the random, like in their wandering AI, because there wasn't actually anybody there to actually really do that. Overall, I think the biggest weakness of this game just entirely is the fact that there's not really a good way to link your base resources. So having to manually go to each base to gather the resources that I'm specifically gathering at that base to then bring back to my home base to then continue out like building things and doing my expansion. It's pretty annoying. I really wish that there was an easier way. Maybe there is, and I just haven't unlocked it yet. That's entirely possible. I've not been spending a lot of time capturing a lot of pals, mainly because I found a cool hack that lets, not a hack, but like an item that lets you, essentially leash a Pokemon so you can have two pals. And then you have two pals out at once, one on a leash and one that you release from the pal ball. What ends up happening though, is that if you have multiple of the different kinds of pals, that are specific towards that leash. So each leash is specific to a certain type of pal. I have 3 of those same pals in my party, and so my leash lets all 3 of them out. And it's basically, I just rain fucking damage down on people. And so unfortunately that also causes me to like not have a good opportunity to like mass capture pals.
You're killing pals before you could even capture them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've got to a point now where I'm at a technology level of steel, but I'm trying to move into guns and gunpowder and musket use. But that kind of transition has been, I need to figure out how to get high quality pal oil. Anyway, it's a thing of progress. I've been playing it a little bit here and there ever since I put in like a really good amount of time a couple weekends ago. But since then, I've just been kind of like putting an hour here, 2 hours there. Not really focusing too much on it just because there's nothing really driving me in that game.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that was obviously you and I talked at the end of last year. We both like got into Lego Fortnite like for like a burst of a couple weeks. And you mentioning like the no way to like link your materials between bases, that ended up largely being like what was driving me away from the game. Was like I got tired of the like 10-minute like real-time jaunt that I had to make between like my original camp to my desert camp, and then the like I had just finished up and maxed out my desert camp, and then having to go to like my snow camp on the other side of things was like, okay, like I got tired of that. I didn't really enjoy like that aspect of the survival game. I was like, this isn't fun for me anymore. I also started getting to a point where like I just lost all my stuff because I died in a snow cave at one point, and I just couldn't get back in to get it. And I was like, there's no fun for me in either the time it will take for me to successfully get my stuff back, or the time it will take for me to like reaccumulate stuff so that I don't need to go back and get that, but I still need to have like the high level gear that I was needing to traverse kind of where I was. So I was just like, all right, I'm done with this game kind of thing.
Yeah, for me, there's fast travel in this game, so you can travel between your bases, but just the annoyance of like, okay, at a certain point you can't walk because you have too much stuff on you. And it's really easy if you're like transporting basic stuff like lumber and stone to get to that point. And it's super annoying, and I don't care for it. So Yeah. It has its own batch of problems that I think is just like kind of indicative of the survival genre.
Yeah.
But without a strong kind of like push forward story other than just general exploration and like dealing with different factions. I think I've discovered like two different factions that are at war with each other as well. But there's really no like, even when I talk to like villagers, like I found a village and I started talking to people there, but it's like nothing, just like generic nonsense. It means nothing to the overall story or anything else other than just like, I'm going to do this stuff because I'm out here doing stuff. And it's like, that's neat, but nothing about that drives me.
Yeah.
Nothing about that interests me. I have zero interest in just like these scaling with gear and stuff for the sake of scaling to get gear has a limited, like, I get a limited return on that investment emotionally, and I just don't care enough.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that definitely seems to be the hook of those kinds of games of like, hey, I mean, again, it's the one I can really speak to being Lego Fortnite. Okay, you've got the green gear now. Okay, now try and get the blue gear. Now try and get the purple gear. And it's like, okay, I've got the purple gear, but now it's just too tough to try and get, the next level of gear. And I'm not
yeah.
I don't have the drive or care to do that. And it sounds like it's the same kind of thing in Palworld of like, there isn't necessarily a story to speak of. So it is just kind of how much are you getting out of trying to build the biggest possible base and whatnot. And even there, like I imagine it sounds like you are probably far more likely to like stick with it than I would have been, because I remember with Lego Fortnite, like you were going crazy trying to actually like build out a base and like, make it like functionally make sense. Whereas I was just like, I just need to get more points. So I'm just going to throw down another building and just kind of like, not really care the aesthetics of this area. I'm not gonna like, you were always talking about like you're building up a fence to protect, like to keep out creatures and stuff. I was just like, I never bothered. I just let the skeletons and whatnot come in, and my villagers in that encampment would like wake up and go, whack anything that was coming to attack with pickaxes or whatever, and then they'd go back to sleep. So I never bothered with like that kind of element of the game.
That's definitely something that I really wanted to do in Lego Fortnite, like build up and make like, because you only had such a limited space to work in. I wanted to like build towers, like places where people could live and have like different things going on. And eventually I got to a point where I was doing that a little bit, but it wasn't the way that I really wanted it to be, which was frustrating and like annoying. Palworld, it looks like there's a chance to do something like that a little bit, but it's just I'm just not as interested. I think the only thing keeping me going back is I really want to try to explore some of these different areas. I've really only been in like one kind of general area so far, and I kind of want to see what the different environments are and see what the other pals are. But other than that, I really don't see myself getting a lot more on the returns on this. I made myself like a nice, like cool stone house, like cut stone, like a manor almost, and it's like really nice, and I have it built out to be super cool. But yeah, overall, it's just like not as. I don't find it as endearing as I wish it would be, or just having something to do with content going on. Like I need a bigger mystery of like what's pulling me deeper into this world to make it matter, and it just is not doing that at all.
Yeah.
So
it sounds there's also an element. I haven't gotten to it in like a Dragon Infinite Wealth yet, but the Dondoku Island stuff is obviously the very Animal Crossing vibes and stuff in it. There's also that element of like, I think back to the 400 plus hours I put into Animal Crossing during the pandemic, and I was never about like, I'm going to completely like build my island around a certain aesthetic, or I'm going to like move people's houses or whatnot. It was very much like I built as I went, and just kind of like worked from there. If I needed X number of things to like increase the level of my island, I definitely just kind of went in and crafted a whole bunch of stuff and threw a whole bunch of merry-go-rounds or something, right next to each other, and plop them down, or the teacups, I guess, on the island and stuff. So
yeah, for me, I was not a full aesthetic person, but I did want to give each one of my residents their own space. so they could kind of like make it their own, and they kind of did. But what I did is I found like an entire like section of the island that I just made my section, and I just like lived off of it. I had everything I needed around it, and then just kind of like would go into town once a day to kind of like do things, and then go back to like my private like section of the island and just like living on my own and like enjoying kind of like, you know, I came here to relax and to kind of like be alone. So that's what I did.
Yeah. So is there a similar thing in Palworld where like you like each pal has their own like place, or is it very much like, no, these are the pals that are mining, these are the pals that are cutting trees, these are the pals.
There's like a whole slew of skills that a pal can have. That like I still have not even fully explored yet. I've just discovered that some of the pals that I caught or that I actually grew from eggs that I found have like a better mining, and so I set them up at their own mining camp to just mine. And in order to make sure they're self-sufficient, I put down like a berry farm, so that and then also got like a watering kind, and then a like planter one, and then a transport one. And then the rest of them are mining. And so then that way everybody has like their own pal bed. I basically set up like kind of like this extension camp, but I have to go back all the time and gather up all the metal that they're putting down. I didn't put down any chests because I don't want them, like, I don't want to waste time for any of my kind of gatherers and like transporters to waste time on that, because I'll just pick it up later. I don't care. And then, yeah, that's it. And then I have like a nice base that I have where I kind of have everybody set up in like, I have the central cooking area. And then a little further away from that, I have the central pal eating area. Like there's a location where all the pals go to eat. I have that fully loaded with just a ton of food. And at this point now, they're just like putting out and creating more food. I have a couple of farms that like farming areas that they are producing their own food and transporting it back over to where they all share food. Their pal beds are all around that general area. I have my own section where I have all like my manufacturing stuff in like a row. I have a section for storage for chests, for stuff that I need to grab for easy like grabbing. I have one that is so I have a stone farm and a tree farm, and they're right next to each other. And then I have a chest that's right between them that I can look, because you still have to gather what they're mining from the tree farm and the stone farm. I go to those, I grab it. I'm way too heavy to walk anywhere. I just turn around, like I move the camera around, go into the chest, drop it all in there. The nice thing is once it's in your chest, you don't have to go and grab it from there if you're trying to build something. It'll just let you build whatever, which lets me know that there is like a connectivity thing going on here. I just wished it worked between bases. Fallout 4, one of my favorite things about Fallout 4 is if you unlocked all these bases, all these farms and everything, you could actually set up a NPC who, like, if you were part of whatever faction, your caravan thing, and you could set up caravans to do trade routes between all your different settlements, and then you just had access to all the supplies at any settlement. And that was just super nice, and I really enjoyed that. And it really kind of annoys the crap out of me that like Palworld's not doing that.
Gotcha. Yeah, the shared inventory is always one of those. Like I remember hating that in Animal Crossing early on too. I think they eventually like patched that or added that in later, but it was like well after I'd kind of stopped playing stuff. So
yep. So Palworld overall, like, and by the way, let's just talk about it real quick. These pals are like, I think legally, definitively different enough. Like,
sure.
They are different enough. I think there was some people who like they said like two of them, like a PAL and a Pokemon, had like the same like wire work and like framework. I didn't see that because the wire work and framework for the Pokemon had had like bent legs in it. The PAL did not, and I've seen that PAL move around, and that PAL doesn't have like amendable joints there. So like I don't think there's a strong 1-to-1 comparison for any PAL to Pokemon. However, there's a good like 5-to-4, like 5-to-5, like half and half, or like a 3-to-7. But I think it's like legally distinctive enough.
None of the numbers you made there made any kind of sense in terms of like what you're trying to say.
Oh, ratios. I meant ratio. Like, so 5-to-5 means like 0.5 to 0.5.
I mean, but like
Half to half.
0.5 to 0.5 is the same ratio as 1 to 1.
You're right. Sorry, I'm messing that up completely. Sorry.
Yeah, and so like when you went to like 5 to 4 or 3 to 7 or whatever, I was like, okay, you're just kind of all over the map.
Yeah, sorry about that. I mean, like it'd be like 70% this, 30% not even a Pokemon, or like there's definitely like Pokemon like PALs that are inspired or like blatantly like the concept and idea is a ripoff. But an important thing to note is that Japan doesn't have fair use laws. So in Japan, if the Pokemon company legally could go after Palworld, they would have. Palworld's been in development for like 3 years publicly. The first trailer, the first trailer came out in like 2020, 2021. And people were like, oh, it's like Pokemon, but with guns. And that's like where that first thing kicked off. I don't recall what, I think it was, it might've been an Xbox thing. It might've been like an E3 thing.
I think it was an Xbox showcase.
Yeah. From like 3 years ago. So any litigation potential that the Pokemon company, which is one of the most litigious companies out there, like Nintendo, but even more so the Pokemon company. The Pokemon company literally...
They already went after the guy who specifically modded in Pokemon.
Yes.
And have like squashed that mod. So.
They are very, like, they are so litigious. There is no way they have not vetted it through their legal department to make sure that there's no way they could, like can we sue them? So I'd be very... the fact that they even had to make a statement at all is just, I think, just... people were waiting for one, so they gave them one, and they're like, we're investigating it. It's like, Pokemon Company doesn't take long to investigate. They say, oh, that looks like Pokemon, and then they sue you. So like, that's very straightforward to me. The fact that they haven't been sued yet means that for me. And I don't think Microsoft would have taken them up and put them on Game Pass and like let them blow up the way they have without like removing the game, without there being like very strenuous, litigious things, especially since Microsoft was literally held up for like 2 years in courts, both in Europe and in America, over the legality of them purchasing another company.
Yeah.
So like,
it's definitely, it definitely strikes me of the same kind of vibes that like John Oliver does with Last Week Tonight, of like, we've gone up to the line where our lawyers have said, you're okay. We're not going to be in trouble. Even if they come at us, even if they fight us, we'll win the case, kind of thing. So yeah, I imagine there's a lot of that going on here as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's really where I think it comes down to. Overall, it's a pretty fun game. I don't think that there's a lot of I don't know how much steam this game has going forward, but we'll see.
Is it? Yeah, that was my last question going to be to you. Is like, obviously, this is the first big thing here in 2024. Without necessarily even knowing like how crazy the year is going to be this year, do you see this being a game that lasts until like Game of the Year, top 10 kind of stuff?
For me, no.
Okay.
For other people who are more in this space of survival games, probably. For people who like the kind of mashup that they're doing with it, for sure, probably it will be in their top 10. But I don't imagine this having the legs to carry it through like the rest of this year, because the rest of this year has some solid bangers lined up.
Yeah.
So
it definitely strikes me as like another Among Us of like, oh, this is blowing up super high, super fast, or like Fall Guys from a couple years ago. Like everybody's getting in on this, and whether or not, like, especially because it's an early access game, like when is it going to be done, or when is it like 1.0 going to release, kind of all that stuff. What are they going to add to it in 6 months' time?
Yeah, if they added, I will say this, if they could add in a cohesive story to this game, would make me very much more interested about, like, there's different towers that are basically gym battles. If you could sell me on there's a story going on here with the different syndicates and like the other things, and you actually made like quests around them, maybe not even quests, just make something interesting going on with them, then I'd be much more compelled to go take them out. Like you have jails like you have in Elden Ring. Like, those little areas where you basically get summoned through to like an ethereal place that's like the place you're at. And you like the Everjail, that's what they're called, the Everjails. Like you have the Everjails, like you have stuff like that where you literally get taken to a different area to fight a boss pal. And that's fun as hell. Because like they're strong and they're tough and you want to try to catch them because they're bosses. And I like that. I like that there's bosses kind of located around the world where you can try to capture them or take them down. You can let them respawn, go back and try to capture them later. But overall, like, yeah, but what's the appeal of that other than just taking it down? Like, I need something more to make this game matter to me come August or September.
Gotcha. All right. Tell me then. Let's move over to the other things you've been playing. Persona 3 Reload and Hazbin Hotel. I'll let you kind of pick which one you want to chat about first.
Hazbin Hotel's a show, but so I'll save that for last. Persona 3 Reload. I came back from PAX West in September last year talking about it. I mentioned that I got the opportunity to kind of play through the kind of combat system. Overall, I think that it is already I can see the kind of love, the tender love and care that got put into this remake. One of the things I found pretty interesting is the use of Persona 5 cutscenes rather than just anime cutscenes that the 3 and 4 had, where they had some pretty big moments done in the in-game engine. I was pretty impressed by that. I'm only a few hours into the game itself so far. I've just been not wanting to sit down for 6 hours to play more Persona, which I know will happen if I did that. So overall, I just I think it's done a lot to also kind of, how do I put this? It's not the same way that I think Persona 4 and 5 kind of gave you that distinction between child character models and teenage character models that kind of 4 started with and 5 I think perfected. They're redoing that this time around with Persona 3. There's distinctive heights between characters, but the proportions of the in-game models feel better defined in a better way. Obviously, it's on a modern console and modern game engine rather than the older versions. But I think that it's done a really good job of really giving it a better fidelity overall, not just a nice veneer on top of it. This game was truly rebuilt in this engine to be this way, and I think that it's pretty good so far. The new voice acting, I've heard a lot of people have issues with it. I was never super attached to Persona 3 on that level, where I am dedicated to the ideas of performances and voice actors. Love the voice actors from the original game, but when I hear Liam O'Brien's voice, I'm never going to think of a teenager anymore. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was fascinating because I obviously went and played the pre remaster version, the pseudo remaster version, I guess, that they had put that went on to Game Pass.
Remaster.
Yeah, that went on to Game Pass and came onto modern consoles and stuff when they did that, and Persona 4 Golden in recent years. I played Persona 3 for the first time last year, and the only things that really jumped out at me were now knowing Critical Role and stuff, being able to pinpoint Liam O'Brien's voice, and I think Laura Bailey was in the original. I think Laura Bailey played the original female protagonist voice, which you obviously don't get a ton of. So there was okay, that's a novelty as a Critical Role fan of hearing that, but yeah, I don't really have any connection to any of those performances.
Yeah. Also, I think it's always really good when a new project like this comes out, even if it's a remaster like this. I feel or remake, whatever you want to call it. I think letting new voice actors come in and kind of explore this character is good for the the industry, so to speak, the voice acting industry.
Sure.
This is the voice actors who got to get some of these big roles. It's a big deal for their career that they get to take over these roles, and I've always felt like you and I have talked about it before when it comes to Luke Skywalker and other things like that, iconic characters, having somebody else play them gives an opportunity for exploration of that role. And so I've found one voice acting one voice actor that I'm not a fan of, but that could change going forward. We'll see. It's not bad or egregious or terrible. It's just this could be grading, 25 hours in. We'll see. We'll see if it gets grading, but so far, not the biggest fan, not enthusiastic about the voice cast one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so far so good.
Yeah. When was the last time you played through P3? Because I mean, like very, very specifically, I have zero interest in jumping back into this. A, because I only played through the game a year ago, and B, even when I was playing through it a year ago, by the end of the year when we were doing like best of and stuff like that, I kind of forgot that I had played through it last year, because it very much falls behind Persona 4 and Persona 5 in my estimation. So
Yeah.
I think it is a game of a different time, and even updating it with a new coat of paint isn't going to change that. Like, I think they just do storytelling better in a lot of their more recent adventures.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that I've read about and heard other people talk about, that like additional things that they've thrown into the game to help flesh out these characters and give you more of that, like, I would say it's more of a Royale type experience where there's a lot more activities and things to get to know characters better. That being said, I don't know yet. Like, we'll see when I get further into it. But I haven't played Persona 3 I played it on the PS Vita when I was replaying all the Personas leading up to 5. Like 5's first release. Like that, the year before 5 came out, I played through Persona 1, Persona 2, Innocent Sin, Persona 2 Revelations, Persona 3, the PSP version, and I played that both as both male and female protagonists to get both sides of that story. And then I played Persona 4 Golden right before it came out, and then I played Persona 5. And so I haven't whenever Persona 5 came out, which is I think is like 2017, 2018.
Okay, and then. Yeah, for in that vein, obviously this is not the P3P remake, so there isn't the female protagonist. There's only the male protagonist in this. Is that a problem at this point, or is it just like, okay, that's the story you're getting on this one?
I feel like that's the story. My personal feeling on it at this point is cool, I guess. Like that, it's fine. Like it's fine, but I've always felt like the female protagonist in Persona 3 had such great character moments that I'm hoping you'll enjoy through like these additional things that they've thrown in or like changes that they've made. But getting a deeper look into like male character stories and both male and female characters stories, like not having the lens of romance for the female stories was really nice. Bonding with these women and really establishing friendly female relationships with these girls felt great when you're playing the female protagonist, I felt. And with the men, certain characters that otherwise were kind of like, oh, they're a really cool character, feel different when you have an angle of potential romance. And that means certain outcomes for some of those characters change as well. Unless you think that you're going to romance the child, in which case, no. Like, no, even like teenagers, even as an adult, just absolutely not. I was in my 20s at that point too. It's like there's no conceivable way anybody should ever do this. Exasperated beyond even the point of like in Persona 5, where you can like romance adults. It's like it's even worse because this is a child going through trauma. But I really also the fact that like the relationship you have with that character is like very maternal. And you become a very maternal figure for that character, which is, the character having lost their mother. And it's like this whole, like, a deeper connection towards that subplot than you get in the male version. That being said, I think that, this is the one that they did. And that's fine. It's the one that it's iconic. People know it. More people have played the other versions where you can only be the male character, and that's fine. I want to put out there, and this is like my big hope, is... for people if you don't know, Persona 2 had a canonically bisexual main character where you could romance either a man, like one of your male counterparts, or a female counterpart. I would love for us to reintroduce that. At least get that opportunity to be able to select romanceable routes for both genders. That could have gone a long way, I think, in kind of satisfying a few things. I do know that there was a kind of like transphobic thing from the original Persona 3 that has been just axed in the new era of Persona 5, like post Persona 5.
I mean, even Persona 5 had issues.
Oh, Persona 5 did, but that was
got scrapped out in Persona 5 Royale.
Yeah, in Persona 5 Royale, they're like, hey, instead of going at this from a trans aspect, let's go from a like this sub gay culture aspect of it in a way that still had some issues and problems with its initial introduction, but once it gets fully fleshed out, I think is wonderful. And so, like, I haven't gotten to that point in this game. I don't know if they explore it through that manner of speaking, but going forward, I think the fact that Persona 2 already had gay stuff in it, like canonically, like just very straightforward, like romantic interests between two male characters. And the fact like we haven't really gotten that sense is instead it's been kind of playing with this kind of like sophomorish attitude towards LGBTQI plus stuff. But like I would love to see that in Persona 6 getting like some more actual representation and freedom in that.
Okay.
Yeah. Overall, Persona 3 Reload. We'll see how it goes.
About how far in the game are you at this point?
Oh, I got to be only about like maybe 2-3 hours into it.
Okay.
I've been to Tartarus and I've done a lot of the introduction stuff. I've done like the initial I've done all the tutorial stuff now. The world is now opened up where I haven't been able to join a club yet, but I'm like close to that point. So pretty early on in I'm pretty like midpoint through the first month.
Gotcha.
So like I said, only a couple hours in.
Cool. Then let's segue over into Hazbin Hotel.
Hazbin Hotel. So Hazbin Hotel is
what is this? Since I thought you were talking about a game.
Nope. Hazbin Hotel is the premise of Hazbin Hotel is that when people die, they either go to heaven or hell. And every year, once a year, heaven sends down a squad of exorcists or executioners to essentially purge the population of hell because too many people are going to hell and not going to heaven. Yes.
Real quick, I'm just going to throw out there. I hate that all of your anime shit doesn't spell things the way they should, the way they sound like they should be spelled.
Hazbin?
Yeah. I hear Hazbin Hotel. I write the word has and the word bin and hotel, and I Google it, and it's like Hazbin, Hazbin. Shut the fuck up. I don't remember what the last one was that happened with, but it happens every time when you bring up a thing out here.
Is it like Skate the Infinity where you're like, why the hell is it?
I mean, that's definitely one. There was one that was much more recent. I don't remember. I think it was almost certainly one of the things in your anime shoutouts.
That's fair.
Fucking whatever. Okay. Now that I'm seeing this, I've seen you watching this. I've seen other people posting about this too. So apparently it seems to be a thing of the moment.
Yep. It's a very big thing of the moment. I actually latched onto it. Funny enough, and this is really going to piss you off. What I'm going to tell you about this. TikTok. No surprise there. Anything you're watching, I figure TikTok led you to it at this point. This did, but it led me to it back in like 2018, 2019. So 2019, the pilot came out and some people were cosplaying the main character. Somebody who I follow on TikTok, who's like a cosplayer who does a lot of like voiceover stuff, not voice acting stuff, but they do the kind of like the sound is like from a scene and they kind of pair it with this character or characters that they cosplay as. And it's done for comedic effect or funny or poignant or something going on. That being said, one of them did the main character from Hazbin Hotel. That got me interested and I looked it up. The pilot has almost 100 million views now on YouTube. It got picked up by A24. And they recast the cast with like Broadway performers. Like Jeremy Jordan's in it.
Sunk on Earth was the most recent example. So not anime, but still your bullshit.
Yes, yeah. Very much so. And the whole thing of this, back to the premise. So, once a year, heaven sends a squad of people down to basically like cull the overpopulation in hell, because more people are going to hell than heaven by a exponential amount. And the star of it is Charlie Morningstar, the daughter of Satan, the daughter of Lucifer Morningstar, the fallen angel of heaven, who is like a Disney princess, but living in hell. And she is sad that specifically sinners, like there's a whole other nomenclature that I could get into, but specifically she's sad that angels come down once a year and murder the populace of hell. It makes her sad. And so she decides she's going to change things by creating a hotel for people to basically rehabilitate themselves and reform themselves and become people worthy of getting into heaven. And her goal is to work with Heaven to try to create kind of like a pipeline of, instead of you killing people every year, what if like we had people from the hotel who become better people and better souls, and then they get to go to heaven, and that basically says we don't have to do this mass violence. Hell is bad. It's a bad place. They do not like shy away from that whatsoever. It's kind of on the nose for comedic purposes. And so she's joined by her girlfriend, Vaggie. Their first, like the first clientele they have from like the pilot is Angel Dust, who is a gay porn star in hell. And he is also like drug addict and everything. Goes basically is living in the hotel to basically have a place to live for free. But is pulled into kind of the shenanigans of like getting him to reform. It's staffed by by Nifty, who's a little psychopath cyclops maid whose entire life is meant to kill bugs. Husk, who is a bartender slash like Sphinx demon, who is surly and voiced by Keith David.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I'm looking at the cast list.
Yeah, and then Alistair, who is the proprietor. So not the proprietor, he's the host as well as kind of like head of security, and kind of like the fixer for Charlie. And he is a warlord of hell, very powerful demon, who is from like as a sinner. He came from Earth. He was a radio host in the 1920s, 30s, and has an old time radio voice effect on his voice. And acts very, very old school. And basically, it's about them trying to rehabilitate sinners to the very first episode. It shows that they're moving up the schedule from a year to 6 months for some reason. And it's like there's some stuff getting pulled out, but it has a bunch of musical numbers. They're super fun, very colorful, very fun, very like just enjoyable. It's such a great show, extremely well written. I cannot expressly say like promote it enough and be like people should watch this. If you're a fan of musical theater, I think you really find it enjoyable because there's a lot of like notable like Broadway actors in this. And it's kind of taken off on a life of its own. The pilot, the people who voice casted stuff in the pilot sometimes show up as kind of like extras. They do have a lot more opportunities in the online show Hell of a Boss, which is a spinoff show from the pilot that is keeping them involved in what's called like the Helliverse. But yeah, a lot of stuff is going on with this product and this property, but the show itself has been coming out 2 episodes per week. They just had their season finale. It was phenomenal and amazing, and I loved it. And I just can't gush enough about this show. I like we were doing our like best of year stuff when I first like realized like the first episodes came out, and so I'm like, okay. Another shout out also to like Point in Progress, who have been doing like watch alongs every week as new episodes come out. So Fiona and a few others over there have been doing that, and so it's excellent stuff. Really highly suggest it. For you, Trevor, I'm wary because it does lean into the absurdism. And that might not be your cup of tea, but the music's really good.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the cast, like, I mean, I'm here for anything Stephanie Beatrice does, and so her is
she's
Vaggie.
Vaggie.
So
Vaggie, it's Vaggie, not Vaggie.
Given the themes of the show, I didn't know. It definitely seems like potentially up my alley. Yeah, and like, yeah, I'm just reading through like the Wikipedia history of it, and like you said, like. Original pilot uploaded to YouTube October 2019, and then a year later it gets picked up by A24 and goes into production, and that takes forever due to most likely pandemic stuff. And so yeah, the fact that this has been like out there in some form or another, but just had its premiere in mid January of 2024 is like, okay, this has some sort of legs that like people have been keeping it alive by. So
yeah, the fans really have kept the project alive during the dormancy. I also say that Hell of a Boss, which is the kind of like spin-off one, has been being done by a different animation studio and is not being done through A24. And because of that, they are doing they've been able to pump out episodes over the last few years. Mm-hmm. So they've been keeping that alive as well.
Also seems like it's fascinating that like Amazon Prime really seems to lean into like adult themed animation between like this, which I'm seeing like largest global debut for new animated series on Prime Video. You have Legend of Vox Machina, obviously made their way to Amazon Prime after the biggest Kickstarter in the world kind of thing, and then Invincible, obviously, over there as well. So they definitely seem to lean into that niche.
Who's ever in charge of their animation division is doing an incredible job.
Cool.
So yeah, it's just been really awesome. Can't speak highly enough about it. Like, I've been listening to the soundtrack like to and from work every day. There's just so many great songs. It's great to see like some combinations of people who normally don't work together. Jeremy Jordan popping up as Lucifer Morningstar is probably like a big like, wow, okay. But yeah, it's overall super great.
Yeah, I see like Christian Borle, who I really like from Broadway stuff, and
the guy who played
James Monroe Eagleheart.
Yep.
Who's Darren Criss, Saint Peter.
Yeah, Darren Criss. He's only in it for a little bit in that episode, but man, is he like fantastic in it. It's so good.
Speaking of, I just saw he's going to be playing Seymour in Little Shop on Broadway.
Oh, that's awesome.
Him and
he's going to be great at that.
He and Evan Rachel Wood are taking over as Seymour and Audrey from I forgot his name. He was Chad in the High School Musical stuff. Cole Blue. Corbin Blue and Constance Wu, who was the lead in Crazy Rich Asians.
That they've
been the Seymour and Audrey on the show for a little while now. And so they did like a video on there, like a reel on probably a TikTok too and all that other stuff. But basically like they took off the glasses and the flowers and threw them at the camera, and then the other end of the camera was Darren Criss and Evan Rachel Wood getting the glasses and flowers thrown to them. And so it's like cool. That's they're taking over, I think, sometime this month. Should be every time I see Darren Criss out there crushing it, I'm like, good for you. The better Harry Potter, well, not the better Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe is great too, but like the Harry Potter that I think of because of how many times I watched a Harry Potter musical.
Yeah, the fact that he's like from like a friggin' like workshop in Michigan that kind of like spawned out his career. Like, good for him. He's been hustling it for years.
Yeah,
dealing with a lot of stuff for years. So good for him getting that bread, getting those dubs. He's spectacular as St. Peter. There's a song called Welcome to Heaven that's super, like, all the songs are pretty short, unfortunately. Like, that's the only sad thing about them. They're not longer musical numbers, but they're short, they're snappy, they're very fun. Definitely like some prime, like, easy karaoke numbers for sure.
Sure.
But yeah, his one, Welcome to Heaven, is so goddamn good.
All right. Cool. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I imagine it'll sit out there and come back up, in the best streaming stuff of 2024 conversation.
Without a doubt. Also, they've moved, like, they have not, like, quote unquote officially announced season 2. Amazon hasn't, but A24 is like heavy in production for them right now. So we'll probably see like season 2 a year and a half from now.
Yeah. And again, like seeing like Amazon out here touting that it's like our highest animation debut ever seems like that's a thing they want to lean in on as the streaming wars continue.
Yep. I also will say that I was seeing that it was like the number one like streaming thing online for a while. So
cool.
Yep.
All right. Then I'm going to kind of take over at this point. And all of mine's probably just going to be like in one lump sum because I've just been playing a lot of the Yakuza / Like a Dragon stuff. And this is like a throwback to beginning of 2021 where after Yakuza Like a Dragon like made such crazy waves as being like this is a phenomenal like role-playing game and that really drawing me in and kind of selling me on that game. Beginning of 2021 I was like, okay, well I don't want to necessarily just jump in blind, so I started playing through Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2 and then I jumped back to Yakuza 0. And then at that point I was like, all right, well I don't want to play through 3, 4, 5, and 6 just to get to Like a Dragon. So I jumped forward at that point to Like a Dragon, had a blast with Like a Dragon, put like 100 hours into it, platinumed that game. And then I was like, okay, I'm Yakuza out. So I had picked up all the other games, but I didn't bother really digging into them further. And so beginning of this year with Infinite Wealth on the horizon, I was like, all right, I'm gonna circle back. I'm going to download Yakuza 3. I'm gonna play through that game. I think there was also an element of the shock of going from the Kiwami remasters of the early Yakuza stuff to like Yakuza 0, which was a more modern version. And I was like, that's a step down. I wish, all of these would get the Kiwami kind of treatment. Obviously they haven't. And so jumping into like Yakuza 3 remaster, it definitely like looked fine, but it played like an older Yakuza game, and the whole brawlingness of a lot of those games just isn't my favorite thing. But I really enjoyed the story of Yakuza 3. And jumping back into the world of Yakuza Like a Dragon, it is like, God, these guys just do hype stuff real well. Like I remember the first like sequence in Yakuza Kiwami 1 where like you're out there, you're doing like occasional brawls with people, but like the end of a chapter, it's like, okay, you go into a building and you fight your way through like wave after wave of goons until you fight the boss at the top of the building. And it's just like hype upon hype upon hype upon hype upon you knock this guy out hype kind of thing. And just like those are some of the cool moments that the Yakuza franchise brings to the table.
I knew Yakuza was a special franchise when I was playing through Yakuza Kiwami, and you're in the car and then the rocket launchers start showing up.
Okay, yeah.
That's when I was like, oh, okay. Because before it was like guns and everything, cool, believable. All of a sudden, people busting out rocket launchers, and it's like, what the actual F?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously extreme absurdity to
Yes.
like it is like the most melodramatic franchise I can think of. And as a lifelong fan of Final Fantasy, that's saying something.
That's true.
But yeah, like Yakuza 3, I played, and then I went straight into Yakuza 4. And then Infinite Wealth came out, and I was like, okay, like I finished Yakuza 4 a couple days before Infinite Wealth, so I was like, okay, that's where my journey like revisit. I'm not going to play through 5, 6. I'm not going to play through Man Who Erased His Name. Infinite Wealth came out. I started recording episodes and decided, okay, I am going to make this kind of like my Let's Play series to kind of kick off the year. So I'm really only going to do story stuff while I can sit in here and like record on camera. And because we both kind of work 9 to 5s now, and I don't have that like extra day where I'm off and you're not, like you're at work. I don't have that like free day to record that I used to have. So a lot of my recording has been like, you go to bed and I'm in here from like midnight to 2 a.m. recording an episode or something like that. And so that has left me with like time in between episodes of Infinite Wealth to sit down and boot up Man Who Erased His Name on Xbox because it's on Game Pass. So I was like, okay, that's the other thing, is like I didn't really want to like spend the money on Man Who Erased His Name, but given that Infinite Wealth is such a two-hander between Ichiban and Kiryu, it was like, okay, obviously I'm still going to be missing like big key moments from Yakuza 5 and especially 6 that kind of led to where Kiryu is at this point in his journey. I at least want like the most recent, what was he doing during the events of Like a Dragon. So that's what you get with Man Who Erased His Name.
Then they give you the full intro in the intro to Man Who Erased His Name. They give you the full breakdown of like what led to him leaving.
Yeah, I mean they give you the big like, here's how Yakuza 6 ended.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, cool. Now I know. Because going into like playing through Like a Dragon, when I played through it in 2021. Kiryu pops up at one point. It's a big, crazy, epic moment, but it's very much like mysterious and like he's not acknowledging that he's Kiryu to anybody. And it's like, what's going on there? As somebody who hadn't played past Kiwami 2, I didn't know, what had happened there. So it definitely helps. Yeah, it definitely helps put some things into perspective, and playing through the entire. So I played through the entirety of Man Who Erased His Name, especially because it's a shorter experience. We talked about it back when you started playing through it, So
Yeah, I fell off of
it's
it.
a
It's been one that I've been kind of like itching to get back to, actually.
yeah, it's a 5 chapter story compared to Yakuza usually being like 14 or 15 chapters or something like that. Um, and so it was a nice, like, manageable. I could play through that while, in between sessions of Infinite Wealth. So I finished that up. And yeah, like all of that to help service my, time with Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Now it's very much like, this is, my first couple months of the year are going to just be steeped in Like a Dragon until Final Fantasy VII Rebirth comes out at the end of this month. And then that will take over my life, I'm sure. So playing through Yakuza 3, it was very weird because obviously it's been a couple years, 3 years since I'd played where Kiryu's story left off in Yakuza 2 or Kiwami 2. So it took a little bit of like, wait, I remember very clearly Nishikiyama or whatever, Nishi-san from Nishi-chan from the first game kind of thing, as like, brother in arms become foes kind of thing. And it took me a while to remember that Ryuji Goto was the big bad of the second game. And so going into the third game, I'm like, oh, that's right. They just kind of like reset you with a new cast of characters each time. I had forgotten that the second game ends with him basically like walking away and going to Okinawa to run Morning Glory. So like Yakuza 3, just lovely Kiryu trying to be his best dad life, running the orphanage and stuff like that. Whilst, inevitably getting sucked back into the dealings with the Tojo clan and stuff. But the new setting of Okinawa was a lot of fun in that one. And I just kind of like blazed through that one. And then Yakuza 4 was wild in that it is it took 40 hours before I got to really play as Kiryu. Admittedly, because I was doing all of the side stuff, but like Yakuza 4, for those that don't know, goes from a 1, maybe 2 protagonists. Actually, I guess this would have been the first like split protagonist game, because I had played Yakuza 0, which splits you between Kiryu and Goro Majima, but that game actually comes out after 5, I think 4 or 5 in the release order of games. Like the prequel. I think it
came out after 6.
It might. I remember looking this up, and I remember it being like between. I remember it being before 6.
Okay.
In terms of like when it was released.
Okay.
Obviously, it is a prequel, so it takes place like well before the events of the first game.
Yeah.
But like that was the first like split focus game that I had played. So this one being split between 4 different protagonists, and Kiryu is the 4th one that you play through. So you're playing like 4 chapters with each of these other 3 characters first, and kind of getting their stories before you like revisiting Kiryu. Like Kiryu pops up once or twice in other characters' stories, but it was very much like for a series, a franchise that has built itself around this character, it is wild how long it is taking to get to that character. It gave me what I like always think of when people talk about like Metal Gear 2 and kind of thing of like, it was the inverse of that of like Metal Gear 2, you start as Solid Snake, and then you are not Snake for the rest of that game, and everybody was like, fuck this noise. And so this was just wild. But ultimately, like I enjoyed the stories of the new characters. I didn't like the combat of I would say half of them. Like the first one is Kiryu, but with his feet. So he's just like out there kicking. This was Akiyami or something like that. And then you get Saejima, who like I knew from like a dragon kind of thing because he pops up in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew like a later version of him. So I was like, oh, I know he's at least going to survive this game. But he's very much like the heavy brawler. So he was like very slow. You have to kind of like use charge attacks to really do stuff with him. And he was just like, he was the toughest for me to like really grapple with. Even playing on like easy mode was just like the normal button mashing that I tried to do with, Kiryu or something, just
Yeah.
pressing square over and over again wasn't really doing the trick. Then you got the cop who very heavily relies on like parries and stuff like that, which is never a thing I like doing in games. And then finally Kiryu comes into the fold. And I still like I love the Morning Glory side of Kiryu. I think that especially like the first game, devastating that his love, dies kind of before that can ever like really become a thing. And it's sad that he never like kind of recovers from that or like moves on, finds new love, finds a new life. But like the closest thing he does is he does that with the Morning Glory kids and kind of filling in that role as a father.
Yeah, I think he kind of moves into that era. Like he understands that his time for, I guess it's like his time for romance has gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's into how do I preserve life for the people who I'm raising, but also how do I set them up for success in the future?
Yeah.
And that's a big part of his journey throughout, 3, 4, and 5, and eventually 6. But
maybe this is the nearly 39-year-old in me, but I'm like, I don't want to feel like he's past his prime. He could have found love still.
I meant it more culturally than anything else, rather than age.
Sure.
Like he's gotten to a point now where culturally he has like.
I mean, it's definitely weird him going to host his clubs and doing like those mini games and being like, he's like in his 50s and all these women are being like, I'm 19. Would you like champagne?
Yeah.
I'm just like, all right, this is odd, but I'm doing it for the, bonus points and trophies or whatever.
I think for me, that's much more of like he likes that atmosphere, and it's less of like, and it's like a one-on-one conversation with somebody who is not going to like, and that's part of like kind of the appeal of those mini games is that you get to see like a softer side of Kiryu. That he can kind of let down his guard
like my favorites in 3 and 4 are like him having conversations where he's talking about him running the orphanage and talking about the kids and stuff like that, and like the women who like light up at that of like, oh my god, I didn't think you would be that kind of guy. So yeah, Yakuza 4, wild. I think one of the most like, this person backstabs you, and then this person backstabs you, and then this person backstabs you, and this person backstabs this other person, and like it's the most betrayal-filled one maybe of the games, and also harken back to some of the like devastating deaths and sadness of the first one. So yeah, jumping then from that ahead a couple games to The Man Who Erased His Name. I think you dropped off maybe like chapter 2.
Chapter
it sounds like
3.
based on where we were talking about.
Yeah, chapter 2. Like end of chapter 2, I dropped off.
And yeah, it was fun for me as somebody who, like, obviously I'm playing the remasters, which are mid 2010s remasters of 2000s games. So yeah, I want to say I looked it up, and the original Yakuza 4 came out like 2009. So it was like, this must have been wild to the people who like loved that series to jump into that game in 2009 and not get to play as Kiryu for so long. And so jumping from that into a 2023 version of this world, and obviously most of this game takes place in Sotenbori, which I had last been to in Yakuza 0 and stuff. It was fun seeing like the glitz and glamour of that city and that location in the latest engines and all that stuff. And I had a fun time with that one. It was the most I got into the combat stuff. And I think, so like, I had a ton of fun playing in the Coliseum of Man Who Erased His Name, where you can kind of do a mix of, you can do one-on-one fights, or you can do one on like mob fights kind of thing, but then they also have like a Hell Rumble where you like the big kind of like management mini game of that one is you are recruiting Joryu's clan members to fight alongside you in the Hell Rumble matches of the Coliseum. So you can do like, you can recruit up, you can recruit I don't know how many people, but you can like, there are some matches where you can bring in 4 allies, and there are some matches where you can bring in 10 allies. And so it's like you and 10 other guys running in and beating down, a swarm of goons in the game, and they're kind of all working on AI. You can kind of like power them up in boosts and stuff like that. You, outside of combat, you can raise your bond level with them to make them stronger and to increase their stats and stuff like that. And they're also leveling up alongside you. So it was a fun like mini game to do. I did pretty much everything there is to do in Man Who Erased His Name in terms of like I finished all of the sub stories, which is the first time I've ever done that in one of the fighting ones, or the more active combat ones. So that was a lot. Actually, no, I guess I did all the sub stories in Yakuza 4 as well. So the last couple I've done all the sub stories. But yeah, it was fun seeing kind of the events that were happening while Ichiban's going through his adventure. But in like seeing the Kiryu side of things, culminating with the like crossover stuff that happens in Like a Dragon, but now from Kiryu's perspective. And like after that, big meeting of heads happens, Ichiban goes off on his way, and you get to see kind of Kiryu going off with his allies and facing down the next threat and stuff. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and did a great job of kind of like putting me into where Kiryu is. There's a like in the finale of Man Who Erased His Name, there's just like a heartbreaking sequence that had me tearing up because Kiryu, who has basically, for those that don't know, Man Who Erased His Name is because he's faked his death and is like in hiding, and he's going by Joryu because people can't know he's Kiryu to keep his friends and family safe. And so like he sees kind of the some of the Morning Glory kids, like, and they get like a scene where they're basically the people that are kind of controlling Kiryu are also monitoring the Morning Glory kids, and the kids catch like one of the cameras, like they see it maybe glint in the sun or something like that. So they go see the camera and start talking to the camera as if they're talking to Kiryu. And that video gets like shared with Kiryu at the end of the game. And like Kiryu starts bawling, and I'm sitting there bawling. And I don't have 2 games worth of context with these kids, but like I have enough to know like how powerful that is for him to get those moments and stuff like that. And
shit, I gotta finish that game. I gotta finish that game.
I think
Sorry.
I think you'll
just thinking about it, because at the end of Yakuza 6, I bawl like a fucking baby every time. When I forgot the baby.
I don't know the specifics of that.
Yeah. There's just a moment, and I won't spoil it for, but it's there's a moment at the very end where like it's like him walking away, and it devastates me every time.
Yeah.
Because there's an entire whole thing that happens with it, and like with like not like verbal communication that can't really be relayed, and it's just it's heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking.
So all of that to lead into my time so far with Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. It's more of Yakuza Like a Dragon, so it's back to the turn-based combat. It's largely going to be Ichiban's story, but in chapter 3, Kiryu kind of comes into the fold, and him and Ichiban are like teaming up. I know at some point it's going to largely go to Ichiban and Kiryu kind of split apart and go on their own, parallel journeys, with Ichiban staying around in Hawaii with some allies, and Kiryu going to, I think, Kamurocho, definitely back to Japan for like his stuff. The way they incorporate Kiryu's combat and moveset and stuff into the turn-based stuff works just as amazingly and fun and well as so many of the other Yakuza staples. Like I remember, like, the all of the potions and stuff be turning into, okay, these are your toughness is your HP restores, your Torrenter is your MP restores, and like all that stuff working so well in Yakuza Like a Dragon. And then they're just continuing to go like balls to the wall wild with silly stuff as well, as so many of the Yakuza games do. Out there singing is it Breaking the Law, whatever like kind of the iconic Kiryu singing song is, singing that with Ichiban in a bar, the two of them together singing in English is also, there's also that element is weird of, I'm glad I played Man Who Erased His Name because I had Kiryu speaking in English for that game. So it prepared me for Kiryu speaking English in this game.
Fair enough. I don't know how I feel about
I mean, you can definitely still play with the Japanese stuff.
I can't do a Yakuza game where it's in English. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I like it. But yeah, it's weird and wild. And I've started getting some of the mini game kind of things opening up in Infinite Wealth. I've been introduced to the Crazy Delivery mini game, which is basically like a Crazy Taxi-esque. You're going around collecting Pac-Man style, I would say. And so there's also kind of an evolution of like the can collecting mini game from Yakuza Like a Dragon, but you're collecting like burgers and pizza and sushi, and you're going around the map and like delivering those. But you can also do like flips and spins and stuff to get like bonus points and get extra money and whatnot. And it's basically like Ichiban in the gig economy. There's app dating through the Mismatch app, as in Miss versus Mrs. match, where I've been catfished 3 times. And that's like, you successfully find a match and you show up and it's like some, homeless guy being like, it took you long enough. And it's like, wah, wah. But successful match. There are, as I understand, there are like a few catfish ones
you just
where
haven't found them yet.
Yeah, that are more in line with like recent Hostess stuff, where it's like you're gonna get a live action scene of somebody, which is also weird. That was a weird thing in Man Who Erased His Name, was going to the Hostess Club, and those all just being like live action videos now.
Yes.
With people.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yep.
this is weird. It was weird enough like playing Yakuza Kiwami 2 with like a photo game where it's like you're taking pictures to a like video of like, this is odd, this is uncomfortable. But yeah, I got the Sujimon League unlocked now, and I've started collecting Sujimon as basically another Pokemon knockoff kind of thing. And they definitely have a lot of fun and tongue-in-cheek with it. At one point, the Sujimon sensei is talking to you, and he's like, you've got to be the very best, like no one ever was. You've got to travel across the land, searching far and wide. Kind of thing. Like he's just like the password to get into the secret Sujimon League is, who's that Sujimon? And it's just like, just silly absurdity. I just started chapter 5, so I'm about to get to the point where I'll start finally unlocking jobs and can start kind of exploring that. And then I think Dundoku Island also gets unlocked in chapter 5 or 6. So like I'm nearing that point where like the game's really going to open up. And I will say that's probably the biggest, not even negative, but especially for as somebody who's like recording and doing like all of the story stuff as like a Let's Play, a lot of like these first 10 episodes I've recorded is like, I would say 2 or 3 of them I dedicated to just doing sub stories and stuff, but like I'm like 20 hours in and it's still just a lot of like, here's the next tutorial kind of stuff, and it's a lot of setup. So it's a very slow start, not a bad start, but it is like if I wasn't playing it for a Let's Play, I'd probably be skipping through a lot more of the dialogue, like because I'm reading it faster than the dialogue's happening in scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or a lot of the like non-voiced stuff, I would probably skip through a lot more. And just kind of like get the Cliff's Notes vibes of everything. So yeah, slow start. I don't remember if Like a Dragon was equally slow in that regard. There's definitely an element of like the first chapter and a half is getting you to Hawaii. So the first chapter being like, 4 hours of setup in Yokohama, where the Yakuza Like a Dragon kind of took place. And it's like, I'm pretty sure this is much like Kamurocho was in the last game, just a tutorial thing, and there's not going to be a ton for me to do here. So I'm just going to kind of largely play through this stuff, but it's so like story heavy and kind of, here's how we're going to get you from where the last game left off to where your characters are starting this adventure, and kind of catching you up. I will shout out, the game takes place in a pandemic. Like the pandemic happened in the Yakuza world.
Okay.
Like the last game kind of ended 2019, 2020-ish. And you kind of, there are elements of starting there, but then, you jump ahead to like 2022 or something. And they talk about how, projects were, started, and they were trying to kind of like clear out the homeless camp and like do construction and build up and kind of do stuff, and it fell through because of the global politics and issues and whatnot, or like the global supply issues and stuff like that, and masks became hard to get, and so there were like they don't spend a ton of time like addressing it, but it is like, okay, that happened in this world too, to some degree. So it was fascinating to kind of see that, at least highlighted and mentioned. So yeah, that's kind of my Infinite Wealth stuff. It's easily going to be in unlike Palworld on yours. I can't imagine Infinite Wealth not being in my top 10
Absolutely
this year.
makes
It would
sense.
have to be a crazy good year for Infinite Wealth to not make it. The only reason Yakuza Like a Dragon wasn't in my best of 2019 or 2020 was because I didn't play it until 2021.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So I just came to it too late to have considered it. And if I had it, I think it would have been like in my top 5 of 2020.
Real question I have for you. Should
Yeah.
I, instead of like working my way through any other game, should I actually try to, at some point this year, play through Like a Dragon? I've never played it.
I was, off microphone.
yeah.
I was gonna offer you to like borrow my copy of.
I own a
Yakuza Like
copy
Dragon.
actually already.
Oh, you already?
I
own
own a
it? Okay.
PS4 copy already. Yeah.
Yeah.
I bought it at the same time as I bought Life is Strange 2, and I've never played either of those games.
Okay. It's one of those that has like the free upgrade to the PS5
Does it? Great.
version.
Okay,
Yeah,
then
so,
I was going to ask you if you knew if that was an option.
yeah.
Then I'm going to do that then at some point this year when things slow down.
I think, because you've played all of the Yakuza like up through 6, right? You've played those or watched them.
Or I've played through Yakuza Kiwami 1, 2, 0, and then I have watched 3, 4, 5, and 6 be played by other people.
Mm-hmm. I would say at least give it a chance. The biggest thing I think Yakuza stuff, you would love all that. I think I think the Yakuza lore and all that. I think the characters, I think all the absurd things that you can do in Yakuza Like a Dragon you would love. The big thing for you would be like how you adjust between the action-centric stuff of the other Yakuza games versus the turn-based of this one. And just again, going off of like last year, you couldn't get into Sea of Stars, so there's a high possibility that it just ends up being too slow for you in that regard, and you're maybe going down the Andy Snowbike Mike camp of hating turn-based stuff.
No, I don't want that to be the case. I love turn-based.
Yeah.
I love so many turn-based games, but the idea of actually going back and like slowing down and playing turn-based right now does kind of like
that I think would be the biggest hurdle for you. I think would be kind of exploring it from that regard. So I would say like boot it up, install it, like give a couple hours to. I mean, you get introduced to the core mechanics of it in Ichiban's youth before he goes off to jail, much like, and kind of goes down his Kiryu path. So you, and also even the way they justify it, I think is more fun, and like it establishes why in Yakuza Like a Dragon he does that. It's because he loves the Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest games, and so he views the world as a turn-based RPG.
I remember you telling me about that, and I was like, that sounds interesting. But
so like that's why he's not just brawling on, he's doing an honorable thing of like he's taking a turn and then he's giving the other people a turn kind of thing.
I actually kind of like that a lot.
And so like they give like an in-world justification for why there's that like mechanical shift that kind of doesn't really get like it gets a little bit explored in the like when the team comes back together and like Ichiban kind of, you know, froze out his hair again in Infinite Wealth and he brings out his bat with the barbed wire on it. And like everybody else is like, oh, that's right. He's weird about this stuff. All right. Yeah. So
Cool.
there's definitely a lot of fun to be had there. And I think I would say give it some time, give it like a shot to see if like it sucks you in the way it did with me. But I also wouldn't be surprised if it just is too slow paced for you. The thing I will say on that front, combat wise, while Infinite Wealth is still turn-based, they kind of add other elements to the turn-based stuff where like in the first game it was very much like you were kind of at the whim and the luck of the draw in terms of like positioning and like because you in the first game if you knock, you know, an enemy into another one of your allies, you might get like combo hits and stuff like that.
Okay.
You have much more control over that in this one, in that in each turn you can kind of like you have like a radius that you can kind of like position your character, so you can kind of move around and be like, okay, if I move over here and attack, it's going to hit him into Kiryu, and Kiryu will get like a follow-up attack too.
So
or
question.
if I'm here, I can hit him and he's going to knock back into his own ally, and both of them will take damage.
So is it not just like an ATB, like everybody stands on each side of things, you actually maneuver around and do things?
Yeah, there's actually like movement.
Okay, that sounds way more interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely dynamic. It's not like classic pixel RPG stuff of like
that's what I was. That's the thing I can't do right now, which is one of my concerns about Persona 3 Reload. Is like that aspect of it. It's like I don't know how I feel about it because. But if there's an active like, hey, bouncing off, do this to get like bonus combo stuff, I'm way more into that. Sea of Stars was such a like, your turn, do your turn, do that.
Yeah,
I need a little bit more than that right now.
That's the like Yakuza Like a Dragon. I will say it's limited in how much you can kind of control. That is the issue there. It's you can choose to attack. You know, if you've got like 3 enemies on the field. If you attack one of those enemies, he might, you know, get kind of the ping pong based on where your other allies are kind of positioned around. But you can't do anything to like move yourself into a better spot to do that. Okay, which you can in Infinite Wealth now. Like that's an improvement they've made kind of to the combat there. But it is it's definitely more dynamic. I'll also say the one of the best things that Infinite Wealth has introduced is the ability once you kind of get overpowered. Like I'm running around like level 20 characters now, and a lot of like the, you know, starter area, you know, are level 8s, and I can now when I get into a fight with them, a prompt will come up as the battle starts of like L2 for Smackdown, and if I just hit that button, like my gang will just bam, 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 and the battle's done. I get 70% of the experience points and rank kind of like level up points for taking like the abbreviated shortcut route, but I can blow through the lower level enemies, or I can still engage with them in a fight like normal and, you know, like just take the extra time depending on if I want that trade-off in experience kind of thing. But I especially will like that as the game goes on, because I always that was a thing that I was definitely feeling myself running into in the late in the other Yakuza games where I was playing recently, where it's like I'm just trying to get from point A to point B, and I'm getting like sidetracked by 20 battles on the way there, where I'm just like, I'm beating the shit out of all of you, square, 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 leave me alone, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
So I it's a nice like it throws me back to Earthbound, when like you're super overpowered and you know, not only will enemies flee from you, but if you do like hit them and it's like, okay, yeah, you're gonna wipe the floor with this thing, and it'll just be like smash, you've killed them, here's your experience points.
It reminds me of Persona 5 Royale, when you are in like the
those ones too,
the subway dungeons, as you're going through, as if you're past a certain point you can just like mow through them and get the rewards. Although if I recall correctly, you don't get like the full experience from that.
I think it's that same kind of thing.
Okay, cool.
It's like
I'm down with that.
You're getting 70% of the experience you would get if you went through the fight normally. if you just kind of do the shortcut thing. So it's the trade-off of like, do you want to take the time to engage with the turn-based combat, or do you want to just take the free experience points because you're already over-leveled?
Yeah, sounds good.
So yeah, I'm having a ton of fun with Infinite Wealth. I'm looking forward to, especially once the job stuff opens up, there will, I think, be a lot more time and stuff I can just do off camera where I'm not having to like, I can still be in here playing the game, but not worry about, trying to respect that you also need the space and whatnot. Because I've definitely done that a couple times where I've just been like, all right, I'm just going to grind. I'm just going to do a bunch of crazy delivery runs right now where I'm not going to do sub stories or anything like that. And just kind of like power up my characters, get a lot of money. Well, that's also a thing. The weird just mind shift of I'm bringing in loads and loads, millions, thousands upon millions of yen in the other Yakuza games to they have like a 100 yen to $1 conversion rate kind of thing in this. So playing in Hawaii US dollars kind of money, it's like I've got $1,000 now, which would be 100,000 yen or something. So I'd feel like, but it seems so much more pathetic when it's just $1,000. So that's also a shift, is being like, I feel like I'm making so little money compared to past Yakuza games. But yeah, I'm still having a ton of fun with it. So I very much look forward to putting more time into this. And I'll be curious when I'm done with this. And because obviously it'll be a matter of going from this and either taking a break when Final Fantasy VII Rebirth comes out, or I don't imagine I'll have finished the game this month, just at the pace that I'm having to play it for Let's Plays and stuff. But I'll be curious if I have the time or the inkling to get back around to Yakuza 5 and 6 sometime this year too, to like round out my time with the kind of core series, or if it will become another thing of like, all right, well, I'll play those two games in the lead up to the next Like a Dragon game in 3 years' time. So we'll see. Yeah, I think that's going to do it for this episode. So thank you, Cam, for chatting all this stuff with me. You can follow Cameron at RevCabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, check out, we just recently did a full like D+ show on all of Percy Jackson and the Olympians on Disney+. We had a great time talking about it. I basically binged the entire show in a day. And so we had a really great time talking about it and kind of like going through our thoughts on it, and kind of Trevor doing like a 1-to-1 kind of like look at it with like, from like the 4 years ago when we did The Lightning Thief. Mm-hmm. Also shout out to Jazz, who was not on that episode because I pulled an audible on Trevor. So
yeah. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey on Twitter. I refuse to call it X because that's fucking stupid.
Nobody should ever call it X. It's dumb as hell.
The worst. You follow me there, and the thing I will shout out is the Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth Let's Plays. I like I said, I have 10-ish recorded now at this point. I think the first 2 are up. First 2 were Chapter 1. The next episode is all of Chapter 2, and then I'm going to spend a good chunk of episodes in Chapter 3 because that's when a lot of the sub-stories start opening up, and I just spend a lot of time doing those. And then eventually we'll get to Chapter 4, which I more or less mainline in a couple episodes. So stay tuned for all that on Tuesdays and Thursdays on youtube.com/thatnerdysite. If you liked what you heard, you can follow all of us over at thatnerdysite.com or thatnerdysite on Twitter, and check out all that for the latest content. I think we may still have some best of 2023 lists coming up. I know we had talked at one point about like trying to get that all up in January, and then we just kind of were like, we're burnt out. And so I know we still have a couple that we're still planning on uploading, each of us. So stay tuned for whenever that goes live. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff, all the normal call to action stuff you hear at the ends of episodes like this. Once again, thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.